Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi barakatuh, everybody. This is me, your host, Preacher Mars, here on the SOS Shout Out Show. Welcome to another edition. I want to thank everybody for coming. You know, you have all these places you could be, you have all these distractions and options. You've got social media, you've got work, you've got television, you got free TV and Netflix. And for some reason, you decided to spend the next 25 to 35 minutes with me. Let me say I appreciate your support, number one. And I appreciate the fact that you're here to share ideas. Today's topic is a little different, but it's not a little different. We're talking about leadership today. And I'm talking about leadership in a very converse way. I'm being very reflexive about it. I have looked into the heart and eyes of my father and my grandfather and my grandmother to frame this idea, where's Malcolm when you need him? We are in a point in time where people say, we've never had times like this, is unprecedented. Stop. You did have times like that, where you lost leaders like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, and both the Kennedy brothers. You just weren't there when it happened. It wasn't going viral. You know, and I think we also need to look at the fact that some of the stuff that we're seeing right now, it's part of the habits of people who don't correct themselves. When I say people that don't correct themselves, that is not just a habit, that is a culture. I was watching something recently, and anyone can chime in on this, but I was watching statues, Confederate statues be pulled down, defaced, all of that. And then it hit me. It hit me hard, people. I'm 53 years old. I don't have any white heroes. Let me say that again. I'm 53 years old. I don't have any white heroes. And I realized my grandfather didn't have any white heroes. My dad didn't have any white heroes. The best you do in a black household is to put Jesus on the wall and Kennedy. That's it. And then I realized something in traveling around the country, not around the country, but around the world, that American white men are not held in high self-esteem. They're not seen as heroes. We have a man in office right now. He's not seen as a hero. People don't fawn for this man. But I watched Barack Obama, and people love Barack Obama. And even if they love to hate him, they still loved to hate Barack Obama. So when I say, where's Malcolm when you need him? You know, people, the thoughts behind this title is, we're not churning out the type of leadership that inspires us to action and inspires us to love. I love Malcolm X. I love Martin Luther King. I love the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I love Minister Louis Farrakhan. I love Dick Gregory because they were men who aspired a society that didn't see them as men. I realized that all of our black heroes, Muhammad Ali included, W.D. Muhammad included, we love these men, and they are iconic in our hearts because they're accessible. Their stories are accessible. Their struggles are accessible. I can't think about white heroes because they're not accessible to me. Whether it be racism, whether it be law, whether it be money, they've never been accessible to me. When I look at Donald Trump, you know what I say? Amongst others, a whole lot of things I say. I said, that guy's not accessible. He gives you the visage or the facade of being accessible, and he is not. Every poor person in America knows that that guy is not accessible. And then you have to play it in your head. And I realize, for lack of a better word, brothers and sisters, Donald Trump is not a hero. But he is the last thing that people can hold on to and say, I idolize that guy. That's it. That's it. And the sad part about it, the way America is going right now, if we don't get this thing straightened out, in 30, 40 years, we'll probably be talking about a holiday for Donald Trump. Or a statue in New York City for Donald Trump. Or a grand library for Donald Trump. Because we do that. We tend to rewrite history. See, the whole idea of these Confederate statues it's a very, very specific and framework workshop idea as to how you can reframe history for the brutality that's happened in this country. In the state of Texas, they wanted to release textbooks that wrote out African struggle. It wrote out slavery. We wanted to rewrite slavery as slaves that came over here were not slaves, but they were merely unskilled labor. And then labor was given to them. So in some regards, they should be happy that they were slaves because they got skills. Think about this. The African community has a problem. We have an identity problem. The identity problem is we haven't spurned the idea that there's always going to be a Messiah coming. I think it's safe to say that when Malcolm X came and Elijah Muhammad came, they weren't messiahs. They were men who struggled with society and found a common thread, if you will, to be successful. At least be successful in their spaces. We're not saying you're going to go out and stop racism, but at least in their particular areas, they were able to do things like build communities. One of the things I always give credit to the NOI for is that they framed this whole idea of what family should look like. You know, going back to Malcolm X and the magazines that he had, and Mike Wallace and his CBS special. It was interesting because the pictures framed not just Black life, but Black excellence. And in our leaders, we don't ask enough of them. We don't put them through the fire like we should. And as a result, we romanticize our old leaders. I mean, think about it. Who has been, for lack of a better word, the person that just transcends everything, that wasn't an athlete? We celebrate Jordan. We celebrate LeBron. I mean, that's sports. You can build a school. That's wonderful. But can you build educational excellence? Can you inspire educational excellence? And so as I begin to move on this topic a little bit, and this is my brother right here. Yes. We need our leaders to inspire the best versions of us. Let me say that again. Johnny Thomas, we need our leaders to inspire the best versions of ourselves. And I'm going to be honest, I have not seen that in quite a long time. I haven't seen anything close. Black people, I'm talking about Black people in a framework of cultural relevance. We have not taken advantage of the fact that we have heroes that are specifically tied to our culture. We let people pick and parse who they want from our culture, and that's what they go with. We're not giving them the whole story. We don't make them accountable for the whole story. In many regards, we have not figured out how to take our culture back from people who misuse it. They may monetize it, but they don't understand it, because when they monetize it, they marginalize it. And we get a couple pennies here and there, but that's not the goal. When I think of Martin Luther King, there's a reason why there's not a franchise of MLK drive-in burgers. There's not a Malcolm X ski resort. There's not a Farrakhan version of Krispy Kreme donuts because people wouldn't patronize those things because they know deep in their heart that these men were different. And let me move over to the other side, that these women were different too. And fellas, I love us. We got to start shouting out. We got to start shouting out our female heroes too. That's one thing about this whole Black Lives Matter thing. You know, nobody's saying our Black heroes matter, because then you spark a different type of conversation where people have to step back and go, well, who are your heroes? You know, I realized that yesterday I talked about Negro Baseball League and the idea of a collective versus a group. We are possibly the only culture in the United States ever that had a group of men dedicated to a similar idea and, in many regards, sacrificed for it all the way up to losing their lives. Though they weren't on the same team, they all had the same goal. It's one of the few times that you can have teams of people with the same goal that are not directly in confrontation or competition with one another. That's rare. That's extremely rare. In fact, I go forward, that is prophetic. That is in the nature of Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. Jesus, may Allah be pleased with him. I mean, these are rarefied people that we're talking about. And then when you come to the day, we're talking about protests, and I never knew George Floyd. But I also understand the scope of civil unrest. Civil unrest, brothers and sisters, is spiritual unrest. That's where it starts. It means you sit there and you watch something over and over and over and over again, and it does something to your spirit. We have no idea, people my age have no idea what was going on. That's all like sis. We have no idea what our parents went through. Shout out. What's up, Sister Ree? We have no idea what our parents went through. I'll give you a story about my grandfather. My grandfather's strong man. I think he died. He worked too long, died too early. That happens with folks. But let me tell you guys something funny about, sound like it was Sister Sakina, about my grandfather. My grandfather loved to read the paper. Problem was he couldn't read. He was illiterate. It's not a big deal. It happened. You know, your grandparents ask questions, you're going to find answers. He was illiterate. So my job was to read the newspaper to him while my grandmother would make his dinner. And I'm 6, 7 years old. I'm reading the newspaper and I'm struggling with big words. I don't know. And interballistic missile. I'm trying to figure out these words. How you doing, Sister Nadir? And I would read these words. My grandfather coined a nickname for me. He said, there's nothing good in the newspaper. So my nickname before Preacher Moss, don't laugh, my nickname was Bad News. Because that's all he ever got out of the newspaper, and I would read it. So by relationship, my nickname was Bad News. And I hated that nickname. I hate it. But what you gonna do? You're 7, 8 years old. What are you gonna do? And then my grandfather took me on a walk one time. And he showed me a house he wanted to buy. But he couldn't buy it. And at a young age, he was trying to tell me why he couldn't buy it. And in his own sweet way, he was saying, there'll never be a good reason or way I can explain it to you. Because you have to balance something that's fair or equal against something that's never going to be there. And I thought about that. And I'm not saying we're soft, but we kind of soft. We don't know the struggles of our parents. Those are our heroes that we have to hold up. Our grandparents that we didn't know, that went through all the challenges and travails of racism. I'm talking real racism, where you have no protection of the law. You're not even seen as a human being, an individual. Forget about your family. The idea of Black families, it wasn't even thought about as even being legal or worth bothering to the late 1800s. And now we have this situation where all of a sudden, everybody has this idea that rights are apparent. No, you need to look at the situation scenarios where there were no rights. The idea of a man who gets up every day, or a woman who gets up every day to go to work and toil for 40 hours, 80 hours a week, knowing at the end of that period, they're still not going to have enough money to pay for their families. And they get up and they did it time and time and time and time again. That's the difference, brothers and sisters. I'm not saying we have to be those people, but you got to draw strength and understanding and a sense of inspiration from those people. In some regards, we have it pretty good. We have it extremely good. And we need to start shouting out real heroes. No knock to rap guys, no knock to musicians, no knock to athletes. I'm talking about holler out the real people that inspire the best in us, as Johnny Thomas said, inspire the best versions of ourselves. And then watch how things change. There's a scene in the movie The Great Debaters with Denzel Washington and Forrest Whitaker. And Forrest Whitaker goes to bail Denzel Washington out, and he talks to this white sheriff. And it was so cold-blooded how he did it. Because in a way, he told the sheriff, number one, I know your job better than you. Number two, I know the law better than you. He said, and I'm doing you a favor. Where's our heroes like that? Where are heroes that inspire people, but at the same time strike fear in the hearts of folks? Because people are going, if I don't listen to this person, if I don't back off, if I don't acknowledge and respect this person, I may help him produce more people like him. And so the beauty of a Malcolm back in the day, it was not that Malcolm was Malcolm, it was that he was part of a chain going back from the 20s, but a chain of Black folk that continually evolved. And King was a process of continually evolving. If you go and do your homework, you'll find that there were people before these people. So before Malcolm, of course, there was Elijah Muhammad. There was Master Farrakhan, but you had Noble Drew Ali. You had Marcus Garvey. If you look at King, what did King have? King didn't just walk into a situation. He had a blueprint of a man named Dr. Vernon Johns, who he basically was a civil rights movement with no civil rights movement. He marched and went across the country talking about Jesus and God and holding people accountable. So when you begin to look at some of these things here, I don't want us to be fooled. I want to reference an interview with Malcolm X's sister, his sister Ella. And in an interview, Ella lays out something I thought was deeply profound. She said, for Malcolm X to be the man that he became, she said, I had to be an integral part of his failure in society. She had to break him to let him know that the society that you're trying to get over on, trying to find sustenance on, it's not correct. And she said, I had to break him. She said, I had to let him be the tiger in the jungle to understand the function of the jungle. And as he came out of prison, she was there for him, but she said something that was interesting. She said, because this is the aspect of how you evolve a Black man in these particular situations. So when we're talking about heroes, I'll reiterate, I don't have any white heroes. Public Enemy said it best in Fight the Power. Elvis was a hero to most, but he never meant to me. The sucker was simple, straight up racist, simple and plain. Mother him and John Wayne. Now, I look at that and I said, that's an old saying. Chuck D was giving you some knowledge, but it's an old saying. And he's saying, we ain't got no white heroes. You got a lot of leaders and oppressors and manipulators. They ain't got no heroes. Ozzie Davis said something about Malcolm X. He said he's an example of our manhood. Well, I'm 53 years old. I'm looking around going, who's an example of our manhood right now? Like, who's willing to step up? You see, the mantra of these guys back in the day was they were so advanced and ahead of their time, people go, they weren't afraid to die. They weren't afraid to die because, hell, they were like, is this living? So when you began to break it down and you know, and I'm gonna give you guys some homework, man. I want you to watch some of the videos of someone who's an extreme hero to me, and that's Fannie Lou Hamer. I want you to watch Fannie Lou Hamer because that's a hero, a heroine, if you will. I don't want to say heroine because it sounds too much like heroin, but she's a hero to me because she articulated the need of self-expression and the willingness to die for it. I mean, that lady was almost killed. And I'm saying this because we live in this time, and I'm not knocking social justice right now, but it's bubblegum, people. It's bubblegum. It's light. You know, oh, we got tear gas thrown on. You didn't get shot. Be happy. Feel blessed. You know, oh, we got arrested. Man, these people who got arrested, they never came home. And I'm saying this because, you know what? There is something that's largely affecting us. Our activism, our ability to speak truth to power, because we're not learning, if you will, at the feet of our masters, because the masters aren't here anymore. They're not here anymore. And it's not that they're not here anymore because they were assassinated. It's like, but we're not developing a protocol. We're not developing coursework. We're not developing a plan. We're not developing strategies that allow us. We're not going to have the next Malcolm, but you can have the next Michael. We can have the next Doug, who are efficient in what they do because they've learned from some of the greatest examples in the world of leadership. Do you realize that our heroes are revered all over the world? Malcolm X, all over the world. Muhammad Ali, all over the world. John Coltrane, all over the world. Miles Davis, all over the world. Elijah Muhammad gets love, all over the world. Farrakhan can go to Libya, all over the world. It's only here in the United States that you have to earn your stripes, if you will. All of our heroes are what? People who fought against oppression in the worst case scenario. And that worst case scenario of fighting oppression is when people think, wait for it, that it's normal. So as we begin to wrap this up, who are your heroes? Take a little bit of time, spend a little energy, and frame out who your heroes are. Look around your immediate area. If your mother and parents are still here, your parents are still here, reach out and say, Mama, who's your hero? And say, who is Granddaddy's hero? And I believe you're going to find a little lineage that's a lot different than what we're talking about right now. Because their heroes are real people. Their heroes are people that made sacrifices. You know, when I say sacrifices, they do something and there's no expectation of a return. It's just what you do. And away from this pop art, if you will, this I want to be famous, I want to be an influencer. They have a term that's just social influencers. I'm like, what is that? These were the original social influencers. These are the people who established. I mean, look at even our religious icons are what? People who fought oppression. So no. I might be wrong, but no. 53 years old, I still, honestly, I don't have any white heroes because I ain't seen them put in the work. And don't throw up Lincoln to me because we all know about Lincoln. So I'm going to get out of here. But I hope in this discussion, when we say, where's Malcolm when you need him? Start talking about our heroes and what a hero really means today. Because what a hero really means today affects what a hero is going to mean tomorrow. Our children are watching. We're watching. Lives depend on it. I'm Preacher Moss. Shout out, show SOS. See you soon. Actually, I'll see you tomorrow. Take care of yourself. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Shout out to my heroes.